So I know this angle is bad, but baby is sleeping right here. And if I put her down, she wakes up and cries. So I figured I would just record the video. I'm still new to this YouTube thing and I don't really have the proper setup and stuff, but I plan on eventually getting there. So the video that I want to record today is to talk about my experience going into labor, basically just from start to finish. So let's see. You guys know that I worked out a lot during, well, if you don't know now, you're about to know, but I worked out basically my entire pregnancy. I found out I was pregnant at 8 weeks, and that first month I did not work out. We were like in hotels and stuff. Again, didn't plan on being pregnant, and I just didn't work out other than, we would walk the dogs every day for like 30-ish minutes. Then we ended up paying for an Airbnb, and we were there for 3 months, and we were like, okay, we need to start working out, especially being pregnant. I need to be in shape, and we had just wanted to get back into working out. So we got a gym membership, and from then on till basically the end of my pregnancy, when they told me to stop working out, which was at 35 and a half weeks, I worked out at least 3 times a week, sometimes more, but it was always about 3 times a week. And that was on top of still walking the dogs, like for 30 minutes. If not every day, it was like every other day we would walk the dogs. So I did a lot of walking, and at 35 weeks, they told me, okay, you need to stop working out. Basically, like, no activity. They didn't put me on like a full bed rest. Like, I wasn't told to stay in bed and not move, which I probably should have, because I would have held her in there a little longer, I think. But everything works out the way it's supposed to work out. But so they put me on no activity. So I had to stop working out, no more walks, no sex, no natural like inducing remedies like the tea, the eating the dates, and like some of the homeopathic things. So I stopped everything at 35 and a half weeks. And the only thing I would do was really like go to the dog park with Josh and, walk from the truck into the dog park. But I wasn't going on any like strenuous walks or anything like that. And I made it until 36 weeks and like 3 days. I think that's the day, either 36 weeks and 3 days or 4 days, one of those. So I was like this close to making it to 37 weeks, which was my goal. So I could have had her at our birthing center, because in the state of Texas, which is where we are, you have to be at least 37 weeks in order to give birth, like at home or birthing center, all that good stuff. So I did not make it. So I had to go to the hospital. And on the night of May 15th, which was also the night of like the lunar eclipse in the sky, I had been waiting all day for the moon because I wanted to see the red moon. So it was at like 9:30, 10 o'clock our time here in Texas, which is when it was supposed to be in its prime. So I was like, Josh, let's go outside and go look at the moon. So we go outside, we can't see the moon anywhere. So we did a little loop around our apartment complex. Wasn't a very long walk. Like, I don't want to say it was more than 10 minutes. Like, it was maybe like 5 minutes. But halfway through the walk, like, and I mean, I'm walking slow, like super slow, because there's just so much pressure already. So halfway through the walk, I'm like, Josh, I think that I'm going to go into labor, like tonight. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, I don't know, like, something's telling me, like, this walk, like the moon, the way things are lining up. And again, I don't remember if I mentioned this in the last video, but Josh had bought me flowers like 3 or 4 days prior, and they were I think Asian lilies or something. And I don't know how I knew this, but I was like, Josh, lilies are the birth flower for May. And so I was like, I'm not gonna stay pregnant until June. My due date was June 10th. So all these things were just telling me intuitively, like, she's coming, like, be prepared, get ready, Like, we had just gotten the car seat, the clothes, like all the last minute stuff, packed the hospital bags like 2 or 3 days prior to the 15th. So we make it back inside. We couldn't even find the moon. It was lightning and it was cloudy. And Josh was like, well, do you want to get in the truck and go for a drive and we'll find it? I'm like, no, no, no. Like, that's how like intense the pressure was. I was like, you know what? I didn't get to see the moon, whatever. So we go inside and we ended up watching a movie and like just like chilling. So then we get into bed, and of course I'm uncomfortable. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to the couch, which is what I did when I got uncomfortable. So at this time it was probably like 11:30, 12, midnight. And I mean, I was like walking around, up into the bathroom, out of the bathroom, into the bathroom, out of the bathroom, because it kept feeling like I had to pee. And I would pee every time, like a lot of pee. So I'm like, oh my gosh, is my water breaking? So I didn't think anything of it. And I knew that when I had the cramps, because I was having like slight cramping, they told me to try to, use the heating pad or take a bath and like let your muscles relax. So I was in and out of the bathtub. I think I got in 3 times. I fell asleep in the bathtub. I'd wake up and I'd be like, oh my gosh. And so by like the 3rd time I got out of the bath and I had fallen asleep in there, I was like, okay, I need to not get in the bathtub anymore. Like, this is too much of a risk. So then the cramps started to get pretty bad and I took a Unisom. So last time that I had cramps, which was around like 35 weeks, after like 4 hours of like cramping and contractions, I took a Unisom and it helped me just go to sleep. So my midwives told me, if you experience that again, like take a Unisom like right when the cramping starts to see if that helps. So I took a Unisom and I did not go to bed. It did not help at all. So that's when I started to be like, okay, like maybe this is real. Maybe this is real contractions. And mind you, Josh is sleeping this whole time in bed. Like, not like heavy sleeping, but he's like relaxing. He's in bed. And I'm just up and down, up and down, up and down. So that happened, the up and down and like in the bathtub, on the couch from like 11:30 at night until 3 in the morning is when I called the midwives. And the reason I called them is because I started to have what they call bloody show. So I had been losing bits and pieces of my mucus plug from like 35 weeks, like just bits and pieces of it, but never any blood or anything. So when I started to see the blood, which I saw a little bit during the day of the 15th, but nothing that concerned me. Like, I was really in tune with my body and I just was like, okay, this little bit of blood, it's fine. So that night at like 2:33 a.m., there was like a lot of blood. And I was like, okay, now I'm getting a little nervous. So I called my midwife and she was like, I know you're not 37 weeks, so unfortunately you have to go to the hospital. Like, it sounds like you're going into labor. And I was just so dead set on not going to the hospital, which is why I waited so long to call the midwife, because I was like, this can't be happening. Like, I'm just a first-time mom. I'm excited. Like, this is probably normal. And so she was like, no, you need to go into the hospital. And in the middle of talking to her, I had to hand the phone to Josh. I was like, I'm so sorry, but can you explain what I need to do to Josh, my boyfriend? Because I was in so much pain. Like, I was literally like dizzy. Like, it was crazy. So her and Josh talked and figured out what we had to do. And Josh had to shoot up out of bed and we had our hospital bags ready. Thank God. I had a list on the fridge for what Josh needed to grab in case, because I just didn't know like if it was going to be like, okay, we got to go right now, or if we would have time. And by that point I was like in pain already where I couldn't really think. So I'm glad I had the list made for Josh, because it was like, grab my hospital bag, grab the baby bag, grab the car seat, grab the labor suit, put the dog bowls up, stuff like that. Just things that like I didn't want to forget. So Josh did all that. He was amazing. He was literally amazing. And I had to get dressed. I was literally in like this dress that was way too small on me because of my belly. And Josh was like, okay, we'll get dressed. And I was like, I couldn't even think of like what to wear. I was like, Josh, like, I need your help. Can you give me clothes? So he gave me my maternity sweatpants and one of his long sleeve shirts. No bra, no nothing. Like, I couldn't even care. So I slip on my flip flops. He grabs everything. And I'm waddling out to the car. And at this point, my water had not broken. I thought that it might have, because I kept, like I said, like I was peeing so much. I thought it was just like trickling out, which can happen. And so we got into the truck, and the hospital, thank God, was only 5 minutes away. So we made it to the hospital around, like, by the time we got there, I think it was like 4 or something. And we registered, checked in. But before that, we had pulled up to the wrong spot. Like, it said labor and delivery, but it was not labor and delivery. And I must have walked, I swear to goodness, like at least 1 mile around this hospital. This hospital was so big. Finally, we get to this group of people, and Josh is looking at me like, I don't know what to do. And I was like, Josh, you need to find someone. And I'm just like hurled over in pain. And this woman is like, are you looking for labor and delivery? And I'm like, yes. And she's like, it's the next building over. So we had to go down an elevator, cross, like, it probably helped the baby drop and everything, and like helped move things along, but oh my gosh, it was awful. And the whole time we're walking around this hospital, all Josh kept doing was joking, which I told him not to do. I was like, Josh, don't joke. Like, just be like, just shut up. Basically, just shut up and help me. And the whole time he's like, oh my God, this hospital has a Chick-fil-A in it. Like, he must have said it at least 5 times from when we got there to when we finally got checked in. And because the hospital had a Chick-fil-A, and he's like, babe, like the Chick-fil-A, like, and it was so funny to him at the moment. But at one point I literally turned to him and I was like, shut the fuck up. Sorry, why? Shut the fuck up about Chick-fil-A. Like, I don't care. So we get registered, we get checked in. We get into the room, and at this point I'm like, contractions are happening like regularly. Like, I think I have like 1 or 2 minutes in between each contraction, to where I'm like, whew, okay, like I can breathe. But when they're happening, they're like painful. And so like the second I got into the room, like they had me get into a gown, and by that point I did not care who saw what. I always like thought that, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to do this? Like, I don't want people looking at me. How am I going to be naked? Like, what if I'm sweating? And they're not kidding. You don't care. You're in so much pain, like to a certain extent, where you're just like, you don't care. So I didn't even care if the gown was on, off, tied, wrapped, whatever. I didn't care. So they hooked me up. They put the thing around my belly to monitor baby. She was doing good. She was doing fine. Temperature, heart rate, everything was fine. So finally one of the doctors come in, and she's like, okay, we have to check to see how dilated you are. And so they bring in this big freaking, the clamp, the metal cold clamp that they use for a pap smear, which, mind you, I've never had a pap smear, whatever. I don't know why I never had a pap smear, but for whatever reason, I never had one. So she brings in this thing, and I'm immediately like, what? Like, oh my God. So whatever, she does that. It's painful, and I don't know if it's because I was in pain and her shift was ending, but the energy was not there. I was so mad at this woman. And she's like, okay, you're 3 centimeters. And I was already, again, at 35 weeks, I was already like fully soft, like shortened cervix, like, so I was basically just waiting on baby to help me become dilated from 35 weeks on. So I was 3 centimeters, and at this point I'm no pain meds, and I'm just like getting through the contractions, getting through. The nurse that was in there, he was amazing. He helped, Josh with how to counter pressure. He helped us with like heat packs and cold compress on my forehead. And it was like, I'm very thankful for that man. So that lasted for probably a good 4 hours, I want to say. 3 or 4 to 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, so that for like 4 hours, I was on the big ball. I was up, I was down. Oh, I forgot the most important part. Before that happened, before the doctor left, I fainted. I literally was sitting on the bed, and they're all around me, and she's talking to me. I don't remember what she was saying, but I remember looking at her going, you're zoning out, like I'm about to pass out. Boom, fell back onto the bed. They were right there, so nothing, like I didn't like fall on the ground. Fainted, I was out, woke up, came to, and that was it. That was the only time I fainted though. And I still don't know what it was from. I don't know if it was from the pain or what, but so anyways, that lasted for like 4 hours. And then finally I was like, I need something for pain. Like, I don't want to do an epidural. I don't want to do, whatever else. I just want something that can help right now because these contractions are getting bad. And at this point, they were like no space in between. Like, they were just one after another almost. So they gave me something in my IV. I forget what it was called, but it did not take the contractions away. Like, I still felt them. They were still very painful, but it gave me like a little bit of space in between each one where I could like, I could breathe for a minute because they were like so bad. So that medicine dose lasted 3 hours. And I know this because after like the first hour, I was like, I need more of it. Like, they're bad again. Like, I can't do this. So that was at like 8, 9, 10, yeah, like 11 something. They came in again and they were like, okay, before we give you a second dose of the medicine, we have to check your cervix to see how dilated you are. So they come in again 3 hours later after the first dose of whatever in my IV, check my cervix, and now I'm 7 centimeters. So I went from 3 to 7 centimeters in 3 hours. And at 7 centimeters, it was too close to give me another dose of that medicine. Like, baby was just getting too close. So at that point, I'm in tears. I'm hysterically crying because I'm in so much pain, and I couldn't imagine going like another 3 hours of the pain that I was having. So they sent in the anesthesiologist to talk to Josh and I about getting an epidural because I was very, very against it. And I even told Josh, like, when we planned our birth, like with our midwives, I told him, I was like, no matter what, do not let me get this epidural. Even if I'm begging you, don't let me get it. So Josh is doing what I'm telling him to do, like, no, babe, no, babe, no. And so the anesthesiologist comes in, he talks to us about it. Josh has his phone, he's doing his research, and the anesthesiologist leaves. And Josh is like, after he did his research, he's like, babe, I think it's okay for you to get it. Like, I don't think there's many like negatives to you getting it. And my biggest thing with the epidural was I was worried that I would like, it could like break in my back and I could go paralyzed, or like I'd have to get a C-section because I couldn't feel to push. And so the anesthesiologist reassured me about all of that and was like, obviously there's risk and potential of certain things that could happen, but they're very slim. And at this point, I was in so much pain. I was like, okay, screw it. Give me the epidural. So he comes back in rather quickly. Again, he was amazing too. And he's setting up and everything. And my contractions are like back to back to back to back to back. Like there's no time. He's like, okay, after this contraction, when you have a second, I'm going to, do it. So you're not like squirming and moving. And the nurse is like, no, like she doesn't have in between time. Like they're like back to back for her. And they're monitoring all this on the screen so they can see it. And so he's like, okay, I'm going to give you something for pain before I give you the epidural, so that way you can like relax, so you can stick this damn needle in my back. So that he gives me something in my IV for pain, and it takes like 3 to 4 minutes for it to kick in, and I'm able to like sit there. Like, it's painful, but I'm able to like hold still. So he does the epidural, he numbs it first, and that was like, it stung, but they were tiny, tiny little needles, so it wasn't too bad. And honestly, like, anything painful compared to the contractions didn't feel painful. I was like, okay, that's nothing, like, whatever. But then when he stuck the epidural in, I couldn't feel nothing. I didn't even know like what he was doing back there because that's how numb it was. And the epidural kicked in within like, I literally want to say like 5 minutes. And they left me with a little button. So if I was like experiencing pain or I needed more, I just pressed the button and it gave me, a certain amount of epidural, whatever epidural is. And that was a lifesaver. I will say that if you are somebody who is strongly against an epidural for whatever reason, don't be so quick to cross it off, because it literally was so helpful. Within 5 minutes, I could not feel anything from my belly button down. Nothing, not a single thing. Like, they were picking up my legs at one point, touching my toes, couldn't feel it. Every time they came in, which wasn't, oh, my phone's slipping. Every time they came in to check, how far along I was, couldn't feel it. They ended up having to put a catheter in, couldn't feel it, like, could not feel nothing, no pressure, no nothing. Like, the epidural did wonders. So after I got the epidural, I was still there for, that was at like noon, I want to say. I didn't end up having her until 7:17 at night. So I laid in bed because I couldn't move my feet. So I laid in bed for basically 7 hours while my body was still contracting. And it got further, the contractions grew stronger and closer together over that 7 hours. And then finally at like, I want to say like 5 or 6 p.m., my water still hadn't broke, but she was like right there. Like, when they checked or something and Josh was right there, they could see her head and everything, like her hair, everything. So they were like, okay, if you're okay with it, we'd like to, break your water. And they showed me what they had to use. And it was honestly like a little plastic crochet hook. Like, it wasn't like, I always thought it was like a pointy ass needle, but it was just a little crochet hook. It was plastic. It did not look scary. And every time they had to do something, Josh and I were like, what are the risks? Like, what if we don't do this? Things like that. Because we wanted to be as natural as possible as we could. And so we decided that, okay, if you want to pop the water, like, it's okay. And so they broke my water. And then within, I want to say like 2 hours, right before they broke my water, I was at 9 centimeters for like 2 hours. And so that's when they were like, okay, let's pop your water. They put the peanut ball between my legs and stuff like that. And then within another 2 hours after they did that, I was ready to push. I was 10 centimeters. And they told me that the doctor that was going to deliver her was in a C-section with somebody else. And that they were going to have me start pushing, because I guess the pushing process can take a long time. Like, some people are doing it for 3, 4, 5, 6 hours. So I had already been there for like 19 hours. And I'm thinking in my head, like, oh my gosh, like, this is becoming like a crazy ordeal. So they send in an RN. We had gone through like 3 shift changes. They send in an RN, and I had my midwife in there, and I had Josh. And so Josh was on my left leg, the RN was on my right leg, and the midwife was at the, like, where baby's going to come out. And so they said, they're almost done the C-section. They want us to begin pushing now. So like, when they come in, you're ready to have the baby. So she's talking to me about how to push and everything, which she was super helpful, which I can do a separate video on that if anybody's interested. And I'm like, okay, like, I got this. So she's watching the screen to see when my contractions are, because that's when you want to push. Because like I said, I couldn't feel anything. So when the contractions were happening, I couldn't feel to know when to push. So she's like, okay, it's about to start. Your contraction's about to start. Start pushing. So I push once. And all 3, Josh, the nurse, and the midwife's face go, and I'm like, what? Like, what's wrong? And they're like, stop pushing. And I'm like, why? What's wrong? And I'm like ready to start crying because I think something's wrong. And they're like, no, like, baby's head popped out. Like, you don't need to push anymore. Like, we have to get the doctors. So I'm like, okay. So they start making the phone calls. They get NICU down there just for precautionary, because she is considered early. So they had the whole NICU team down there. They had the doctors, the nurses, the baby nurse. There were so many people in that room that I just didn't even know. And so the doctors come in and they're like, okay, like, we're going to do the same thing you just did, push. Took me 2 pushes, you guys. 2 pushes, and she was out. Completely out. So it literally was less than 5 minutes from when the doctors walked in to when she was out. and they measured her, they weighed her. There was nothing wrong. She did not have to go to NICU. She was able to come right up on my chest. Josh was able to hold her within that first hour, skin to skin. And I did tear, like the smallest amount of tear you could possibly have. So I had to get one little stitch. And they all told me, they were like, for a first time mom, the fact that you only tore and only needed one stitch, and the fact that you were able to push her out in 2 pushes is like unheard of. Because like I said, most first time moms, especially she wants to be in the camera, especially first time moms, it's like the pushing doesn't come as natural. So it takes, what are you doing, little girl? So it takes some time for moms to figure out how to push, because it's just a different sensation. So I don't know if because I had no feeling that helped. But they said they think the only reason I tore was because I had no feeling, so I just kind of pushed her out, whereas if I could have felt, I might have like eased her out a little more, but that's okay. I'm glad she came out quick and I can deal with the little tear. It was super minor. So that was pretty much labor from start to finish. After that, we spent an hour in that same room. She's so cute. We spent an hour in that same room doing skin to skin and just kind of like getting everything. You're okay. Just kind of tidying everything up, getting everything ready, and then we were moved up into the room that we were at for like 2 nights. And we were there for 2 nights because they just wanted to monitor baby. They wanted to make sure that her blood sugar levels were okay, because again, she was considered late term, preterm or whatever. But she ended up being fine. She was able to come home with us right away. She was able to stay in the room. She did not have to go to a NICU, nursery, nothing like that. Josh was able to stay with me the entire time. He had a bed. They had a box of snacks waiting for us. They sent us home on the day that we left the hospital. They sent us home with a huge meal that we were able to just pop in the oven, along with salad, cookies, bread. Like this hospital visit could not have gone like any better. I was so worried about going to the hospital, and this hospital definitely made my experience so much better. And I was super against the epidural, but I'm glad I got it. I'm glad I waited though until I like felt like I needed it, because I feel like if I was just posted up in bed like for over 20 hours not being able to move or feel anything, I would have gone a little crazy. Because before I got the epidural, I mean, like I was on the ball, I was up, I was on the toilet, I was hunched over the bed, like I was moving all over the place. So my advice and my opinion from my experience is wait until you need the epidural. Like wait as long as you can. And just have your experience for what it is. Obviously, everybody's experience is going to be different, but I would say that my experience was pretty good. I will add, I forgot to add this, like before I got the pain medicine and before I got the epidural especially, the counter pressure saved my life. Like my lower back hurt so freaking bad, and Josh literally had to like put all of his weight into my back with his fist or his thumbs at certain points. And like, I mean, so hard and strong to the point where he was like, babe, like my thumb hurts. And I was like, do not move it. Like, do not move it. So I would definitely look into counter pressure. Whoever's going to be there with you, it doesn't have to be like your baby making partner. It could be your mom, your dad, whoever's there with you, have them look into counter pressure, because it was amazing. But that was my labor story. I really have had so many of you guys asking my experience with it, so I just thought a video would be quick and easy. So I hope that helps anybody who's about to go into labor, and if you guys have any questions, just reach out to me. Bye guys.